Hello and welcome to the virtual version of our study of economics. This video is going to be the first in a series of videos which investigate and examine some of the most important or fundamental ideas associated with economics. The principal area of study for this video is going to be the production possibilities model. It is the most fundamental and probably the most important of all of the economic models because it is the building block of many of the lessons we will be studying in the near future. So it's important to get a good grasp or understanding of this specific economic model, the production possibilities model. Before we get into the heart and soul of the production possibilities model, we're going to review a few things. The first one being the very definition of economics. So here we have on the left human wants. Us human beings, we're a fickle type. We want a whole bunch of stuff, both necessities and luxuries. So hamburgers and healthcare, automobiles and airplanes, and of course businesses need machines to produce goods and services. So if we made a list of the human desires, the things that people want, it's unlimited. On the right hand side we have economic resources. We're going to define these resources in more detail in a few slides. But for now, we know that the land, labor, capital, entrepreneurability that is involved in producing goods and services, they are limited. There's a finite amount of resources available. This is the heart and soul of economics. Human wants are unlimited, resources are limited, and therefore we are burdened with this idea of scarcity. Scarce resources relative to human wants. This principal idea is the reason why we have an area of study called economics. Let's get into the idea of scarcity, choices, and cost in a bit more detail. So we looked on the previous slide and we said that the things that people want and need are unlimited, and that the resources necessary to produce these goods and services are finite or limited. This gives rise to what we call the burden of scarcity. Scarcity is unavoidable. We can't have everything. If we did, we wouldn't have to study economics, and probably everybody in the world would be a lot happier, but that's a different course. That's probably some type of humanities course. So because scarcity exists, absolutely positively, we have to make choices. We can't have everything. We have to choose between producing certain goods and services. And every single solitary time we make a choice, there's absolutely positively, unavoidably a cost involved. We can't have more of good X without giving up some of good Y. If we take these basic ideas, they're going to be the reason why we need to build the production possibilities model. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these principles, these ideas, these concepts, and we're going to use the production possibilities model to quantify them in a more direct manner. Whenever you study anything in life, it's probably a good idea to identify the reasons why you're studying it. What lessons are you aiming to learn from that area of study? That's exactly what we're going to do now with the production possibilities model. Why is this model so important? What does it help us explain and understand in economic terms? Here are the lessons associated with the production possibilities model. 1. Limitations. The production possibilities model is going to outline, explain, quantify the nation's possible production for a given time period. It could be a month or a year. But because we have limited economic resources and unlimited economic wants, there's going to be a maximum cap of production which can take place. And the model is going to quantify this both numerically and graphically show what are the limitations to production within the economy. The second important idea associated with the model, our second lesson if you were, trade-offs and costs. When we build the production possibilities frontier, you're going to see that there's an x-axis, the horizontal axis, a y-axis, the vertical axis, and the production possibilities frontier is going to be a curve that connects the x-axis and the y-axis, and it's going to show us, again, quantitatively, both numerically and graphically, that if we want more of one type of good, we have to give up some of the other type of good. Because the burden of scarcity is unavoidable and limitations are unavoidable, there's no way we can have more of one good without giving up some of the other good. So, trade-offs and costs. The third important lesson associated with the production possibilities model is economic efficiency. Because there's limitations of production, and because every time we want more of one specific item, we have to give up something else, it makes sense that we should operate with maximum efficiency. So we're going to investigate, explain, and define 3 types of economic efficiency. The last economic lesson associated with the production possibilities model is economic growth. We do not live in a stagnant world. Things change going into the future. The production possibilities model shows us what we can do today. But is there any possibility that we could do better in the future? So the last idea is, how can an economy achieve economic growth going forward? All right, we've been speaking about this idea of limited economic resources for quite some time. Let's define and explain the economic resources in more detail right now. Economists typically identify 2 types of economic resources: property resources and human resources. The property resources are land and capital. The McConnell textbook does an excellent job of defining land. Land is the gifts of nature: oil, copper, minerals, natural gas, wind, solar. Anything that's part of the earth that can be used in the productive process is a land resource. Us economists like to have specific terms associated with economic principles. This is important to identify now. Each of these economic resources has a specific type of income associated with it. So land receives rent or rental income. Let me give you a quick example of this. Today is the 24th of August 2016. A barrel of oil is trading at approximately $47 per barrel. So when that barrel of oil was taken out of the ground today and sold, it received $47 worth of rental income. So land receives rent. What is capital, our second property resource? Capital are the manufactured aids and tools used in the production process. So machines and equipment. You can think of the heavy machinery needed to produce automobiles. So for instance, Ford Motor Company spends upward of $20 million on a piece of machinery which ultimately connects the chassis to the frame of the automobile. That's a good example of capital. But capital can be more simplistic. A tablet used in a coffee shop which calculates sales for the day and profit margins and inventory, that's a piece of capital. Even things that are virtual, such as software used by an accountant to report the quarterly earnings to those shareholders, that's a piece of capital. Capital receives interest or interest income. What about the human resources? Labor is the easiest one to explain. Labor is simply the mental and physical tools of human beings that are used in the productive process. So a teacher is a good example of a labor resource, in this case mental capabilities used in the productive process, or someone who works on the front lines of a mining company digging ditches or operating machines, that's a labor resources. Labor receives wages, and the wages include both your paycheck and your fringe benefits. The entrepreneur is a unique type of human resource. You can think of the entrepreneur as having the following qualities. Number one, the entrepreneur, she or he decides how to combine the other economic resources. Maybe what good or service to produce, inventing a new good or service. They're risk takers and they're decision makers. So the entrepreneur is above and beyond the laborer, a specific type of human resource. Now, I mentioned that the entrepreneur takes risks. If successful, the entrepreneur receives profit income, but he or she could also suffer economic loss.